Hi there, this is David Roach, Quantum Economics, Independent Strategy. Germany, the election results are out. Of course, we don't know what the government is going to be, but we can take an educated guess about that. So I'm going to start at the end and then at the beginning. The actual likelihood is that we will get the sort of government we have been talking about, which is a government composed of the Social Democratic Party, the SPD, the Greens, and the FDP. And now that is a government which will change things. And we will come to what it will change in a little bit. But it is definitely in Germany about change, with over 51% of the population voting for either good or bad sorts of change, but nevertheless change. And the big loser out of this election is, of course, the CDU, and in particular, the head of the CDU and the chancellor candidate, Laschet, who is a very weak candidate indeed. Now that has implications. Okay, the alternative coalition that you might get, and I don't think you will, but it's definitely going to be talked about by a lot of people, is the CDU and the CSU, and they get together with the Greens, and then they get together with the Liberals, the FDP. I think that's most unlikely to happen, and I'll tell you frankly why. Because the parties which have won the outright in this election and done really well, which are the Greens and above all the SDP, would need to have a hidden death wish to get into bed with the biggest loser in the election, the CDU, and with its chancellor candidate, Laschet, who is hopeless. And therefore, if the most successful parties in the election got together with the least successful party in the election, they would not be able to deliver on their program. And they would be punished by the electorate whenever the electorate got an opportunity to do so, justifiably. So that's why I think we're going to get the sort of coalition we have been talking about, composed of the SDP and the Greens and the FDP. Now, the actual electoral results are interesting because they determine how many seats there are going to be in the Bundestag and how they're going to be distributed. Okay, the SPD got approximately 206 seats, according to the arithmetic that we do. The CDU, CSU got 196. The Greens got 118. And the FDP got 92. That's really all that matters as regards negotiating a coalition, because the Die Linke, which is the leftist party, formerly Communist Party of East Germany, they did extremely badly, coming in at almost 5% of the vote, or just thereunder, and nobody is going to do business with them. And of course, nobody will do business with the AfD, who are the racists and fascists either. So we're basically looking at a coalition which will be the SPD, the Greens, and the FDP, and I think the CDU will have to go into opposition. So that's how the seats are going to be split up. And if I'm right on that coalition, then they will have a comfortable majority of over 56% of the seats in the Bundestag. And if by any chance it was a CDU-led coalition with the Greens and the FDP, which, as I've said, I doubt, then they would also have a majority of 53%, but I simply don't think that's going to happen. Okay, so that's the result. What does it mean? It means some fairly significant things, but we have to remember this may have been a vote for change in Germany, but it was not a vote for revolution. So changes they will come, but they will come quite gradually, and the markets will kind of be friendly to that result. If you look at the changes that I expect, first of all, I expect Germany to spend more money on going green more rapidly, and I expect to spend more money on its own infrastructure, say between 0.5% of GDP and 1.5% of GDP. that will happen. The fiscal rules in Germany, which are the Schuldenbremse, the debt brake, and the Schwarze Null rule for zero budget deficits, those are pretty nonsensical in a country with a huge budget surplus and the savings surplus and the current account surplus anyway. But I think they will not be immediately rescinded. I think what will happen will be that they will be circumvented. And we will find that the additional investments, which the new coalition I'm talking about would have to undertake, they will be actually taken out of the budget arithmetic and treated sort of separately, which will create a degree of freedom. I also think that on the European level, the famous European Stability and Growth Pact, which is anything but, which says that every state in the European Union has to achieve 60% of GDP, sovereign debt to GDP ratio, and not run budget deficits greater than a structural 3% of GDP. That rule is arithmetic. It was passed in order to get the euro done. It's called the Maastricht Agreement. It's absolutely a load of economic codswallop because it would imply that Europe would have to run deflationary budget primary surpluses for the next 20 years, which would basically create the on-Earth version of a cosmic black hole. So that needs to be changed. It's not going to be changed upfront in a fluorescent sort of way, but it will be changed over time. And it would not be changed. It could not be changed if Germany was not ruled by a new coalition with new ideas. The changes do not stop there. I think it's very important that the new coalition will be very pro-European, which means it will be act to reinforce and make permanent the mechanisms involved in the European Union New Generation Fund, which actually is a way of transferring productive capital from the north of Europe, which is a surplus capital area, to the deficit southern Europe, while at the same time ensuring that that money is spent on things that do actually boost productivity and make debt, which is far too high in the south of Europe, sustainable. So in a sense, this new government in Germany is, if it takes the shape that I'm predicting, will act in support of Mario Draghi in Italy and the other leaders of Southern Europe in achieving a complete revision of how their economies grow and how their debt becomes more stability and the productivity of the whole economic machine. And that, I think, is very, very important. So that's what the coalition actually means. And while it is not, as I say, a vote for revolution, it is a vote for evolution. I think the direction of change will be positive under this government. And I would advise you not to lose all hope, not to turn off the lights, but to say goodnight. And we'll talk again soon.